The night sky lights up without a sound. No thunder, no shockwave, just a thin, blinding line of light cutting through darkness. A missile never reaches its target. A drone vanishes mid-air. There is no explosion on the ground below. For the first time in human history, a weapon strikes at the speed of light and leaves almost nothing behind. This is not science fiction. This is a crossroads, and the question is no longer if it happens. It is what happens next if laser weapons become the new standard of warfare. Imagine a world where wars are no longer defined by fireballs, shock waves, or mushroom clouds. Instead, they are defined by precision, by silence, by invisible beams traveling faster than thought itself. Laser weapons are already real. They exist on ships, on trucks, and in testing ranges around the world. But today, they are experimental, limited, supplementary. Now imagine a future where they are not. A future where lasers replace bullets, missiles, and artillery as the primary tool of combat. This is the what if. At its core, a laser weapon is deceptively simple. Energy is generated, focused, amplified, then released as a concentrated beam of light. Unlike a bullet, it has no mass. Unlike a missile, it carries no fuel. Unlike an explosive, it creates no blast radius. It delivers energy directly to a target, heating it in milliseconds until metal melts. Electronics fail or structures collapse from within. The defining feature is speed. A laser does not travel, it arrives. From trigger pull to impact, there is effectively no delay. No interception window, no warning time. In a world where lasers become standard, reaction time, not firepower, becomes the deciding factor. The consequences begin with cost. Traditional warfare is expensive because every shot is a physical object. A missile can cost millions of dollars. A single interceptor round may cost more than the drone it destroys. Lasers change this equation completely. Once the system is built, each shot costs only the energy required to fire it. Dollars instead of millions. Electricity instead of explosives. Wars stop being limited by ammunition stockpiles. They become limited by power generation. Whoever controls energy controls the battlefield. Precision becomes absolute. Laser weapons do not miss because of wind gravity or distance in the traditional sense. They do not scatter. They do not drift. They hit exactly where they are aimed. This changes military doctrine at every level. Collateral damage once considered unavoidable becomes a strategic failure rather than an expectation. Cities are no longer flattened to destroy one target. Infrastructure is no longer reduced to rubble to disable an enemy. Instead, specific components are burned out. Sensors, guidance systems, communications nodes. War becomes surgical, and that is where the moral complexity begins. Historically, each leap in weapon technology has promised cleaner, faster victories. The longbow changed medieval warfare. Gunpowder ended the age of castles. Aircraft made borders meaningless. Nuclear weapons redefined fear itself. Each time humanity believed the new weapon might end war. Each time war adapted. Laser weapons would follow the same pattern. At first, they would be defensive. Ships using lasers to shoot down incoming missiles. Bases using them to eliminate drone swarms. Cities protected by invisible shields of light. Success would breed confidence. Then expansion would follow. Air combat would be transformed almost overnight. Fighter jets are designed around speed, stealth, and maneuverability. But none of that matters when a beam travels at light speed. Dogfights disappear. There is no turning radius against a laser. No evasive maneuver fast enough. Aircraft must either avoid detection entirely or accept instant destruction. Stealth becomes absolute or irrelevant. The sky becomes hostile in a new way, not loud, not chaotic, but unforgiving. Naval warfare changes even more dramatically. For centuries, the ocean protected fleets through distance. Missiles narrowed that gap. Lasers erase it. A warship armed with high-powered lasers can engage threats as long as it has line of sight and power. No reloads. No magazines running dry. Swarm attacks, once a nightmare scenario, become manageable until attackers adapt. They always adapt. On land, the transformation is slower but deeper. Infantry weapons based on lasers remove recoil, remove ballistics, remove cover as we understand it. Walls that once stopped bullets no longer matter. Heat finds weak points. Electronics fail instantly. Soldiers are no longer just fighters. They become energy managers, sensor operators, and system integrators. The battlefield becomes quieter but far more lethal. Now consider escalation. Laser weapons do not explode. They do not leave craters. They do not shock populations in the same visceral way. This matters. Historically, the horror of destruction has acted as a brake on conflict. Burning cities, civilian casualties, televised devastation. Lasers reduce visible damage. War becomes easier to justify when it looks cleaner. This is one of the most dangerous consequences. When the cost appears low, the temptation to use force rises. Countermeasures emerge quickly. Reflective coatings, ablative armor that vaporizes layer by layer, rapidly spinning surfaces to disperse heat. Smoke, dust, atmospheric interference. Lasers are powerful but not invincible. Weather becomes a weapon again. Fog, rain, sandstorms. Nature reasserts itself as a factor in human conflict. Energy infrastructure becomes the new strategic target. Power plants, grid connections, fuel sources for generators. Disable the energy and the lasers go dark. Cyber warfare becomes inseparable from kinetic warfare. Hack the grid and you silence the weapons without firing a shot. Wars are no longer fought only with soldiers and machines. They are fought with code electrons and control systems. Globally, the balance of power shifts. Nations rich in fossil fuels lose an advantage. Nations rich in renewable energy, nuclear power, and advanced grids gain one. Sunlight becomes a military asset. So does uranium, so does battery technology. The definition of a superpower changes. Arms control struggles to keep up. Treaties written for missiles and bombs fail to address weapons that fire light. How do you count shots when there are no shells? How do you verify limits when energy can be diverted instantly? Deterrence becomes unstable. There is no equivalent of a nuclear explosion to signal red lines. Only systems quietly coming online. Only beams unseen until they strike. And yet, despite all this, laser weapons do not eliminate war. They change its shape. Conflict becomes faster, cleaner on the surface, more complex underneath. The human cost does not vanish. It simply becomes less visible. In the end, the most important change is psychological. For thousands of years, humans have heard war before they saw it. The roar of engines, the thunder of artillery, the screams. Laser warfare is different. War arrives without sound, without warning, without spectacle, just light. And when destruction becomes silent, the distance between decision and consequence grows dangerously small. So here is the question that lingers. If weapons become so precise, so fast, and so invisible that war feels almost abstract, will humanity become more careful with power? Or will war become easier to start than ever before? Because the moment warfare moves at the speed of light, the margin for human error disappears. And history tells us one thing with certainty. We do not stop making mistakes. So the real question is not whether laser weapons will become the standard. It is whether we are ready for a world where the trigger is pulled and the outcome is instant. And if this is the future of war, what happens when the next weapon moves even faster than light,